Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday night. We are going to take and do something a little different. We've been doing streaming games and having a blast. So Tuesdays and Fridays is trying to be what the schedule is going to be. We're still going to have games and stuff. But what I'm going to try to do is work on doing just giving some free tutelage. This is just going to be a short, probably 30-minute stream. Hey, Hyper Bunny, how are you? Welcome to the chat. We're just going to kind of go through some different philosophies and thought processes of the way that I approach the game. Not that they're right or wrong. Everybody does it. I'm just doing it for free and giving different thought processes, and we'll see how it turns out. First, definitely want to start off by thanking sponsors. As you can see, the terrain's still laid out. Merlin's Grim Dark Painting on Facebook took and painted it for me, and I greatly appreciate it. And it's on the stream, so it looks really good. Looks good on the table, so we appreciate that. And then you've got Clutch. They'll run their annual major. It's coming up in March. And then Dragon's Lair, the local hobby store here, does a lot of things with me and has monthly RTTs. So with that, we'll kind of get into the non-clickbait line of the chat, chess and 40K. So the way I approach it, and a lot of things, people will always say, play the mission, bring an army, build your list to play the secondaries, play the mission, and so forth. Fun fact is that most of the time when I play an army for the first time, I don't even look at the list, and I really don't know what's going on with the list and have no idea how they're approaching the list. I'll ask for some key pieces to make sure that I don't get caught off guard. But for the most part, I just play the game that I want to play, which is my version of 40K. So we'll kind of go through it from that standpoint. With that being said, no matter what the mission is, you're always going to have objectives. They're going to be laid out on the table. And so that is the game. That is what you're playing. With that being said, the chess piece, and this is why I say chess and 40K, when I was younger, way younger, and lived in a college town, there was a gaming store. And one of the people I'd go in and see, the game owner, was a chess master. And so I forget what level he was, but probably 4 nights a week, I went in and played chess with him. We'd sit in the front of the store, in front of the glass. He'd see people come in and leave, so you could watch as far as that goes. Had somebody working the counter, and me and him played chess. And that's what we did probably 4 nights a week. And that's what I did. And so one of the things I learned taking and working with him, playing chess, is it's always about pressure. And in chess, your first move is applying pressure. And then the counter move for the opponent to move is to apply pressure in the same place that you applied pressure. And so you're always applying pressure into those spots. So you have to choose where the pressure is. Now what happens is sometimes you'll force the opponent where they make a move that does not apply pressure. Well, at that moment, then you can either apply more pressure or you get to apply pressure in a second spot. When you're able to do that, then you have the advantage in your hand. Doesn't matter how many pieces you have, you've just applied pressure in 2 spots, and they have to figure out how to shore those up to be able to make sure that you don't capitalize on them and actually put the game state in more in your favor than theirs. Because when you start the game, it's equal game state. So with that being said, one of the things that you want to look at, and the way I approach 40K, so I'm going to take and go down from the top view here. So it should flip over there. Yep, yeah, cool. So one of the things that you want to look at is anytime I look at any table, no matter where the objectives are, and so forth, I divide the table into 4 corners. When you look at the 4 corners, you're either going to have half the quarter, some of the quarter in your area. You're going to have a quarter of it if it's angle deployment. If it's Dawn of War, you'll have this section here. If it's, Hammer and Anvil, this section here. Dawn of War, you're going to have the 12 inches here on this side. But what you want to do is you want to look at those 4 quarters. So if you look at this and compare it to kind of a chess table piece, everybody starts with 2 quarters. Some way, somehow, unless it is one of the corner deployments, then you kind of start with 1 quarter, and there's 2 quarters open. So with that being said, what you want to do is you want to be able to apply pressure and be able to control 2 quarters and apply pressure in the 3rd quarter. Where people get lost in the game, not necessarily lost, but the way they approach it, it's all about tactics on moving units and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's a board control. If you control board, you win the game. You've got primaries, you've got secondaries, you can cover that. So if you're starting off and you have this quarter and you're applying pressure in this one, you're not really worrying about this 3rd quarter over here because it doesn't matter. You're in a 3-to-1 advantage. The figuring out is how to get the game state to switch. And there's a lot of things you can take and look at when you're approaching that is what models can do for you. And so if you see from the top view, I've got several different models. And I don't know if you can see these. No, we're going to pull them out just a little bit so you can actually see this. Several different army pieces of different models that I've got to kind of show what I mean by applying pressure. So one is just your standard troop choice. Their objective secure. They have fight, they have some shooting, they could be deadly, they may not be deadly, but they're troops, so their objective secure. So the way to apply pressure in those quadrants is being able to hold those objectives, being able to say, I'm going to hold this and control it. So that's the way that I look at them as applying pressure. So a lot of people have seen me play different ones, and most of my lists aren't really killing, but the way I look at these models is they're going to hold this quadrant, and you're not going to take it from me unless you kill them all. And if I've got a lot, I'm going to have it. If you leave me one, I'm going to have it. Because right now in the state of 40K, a lot of people are bringing more elites choices, stuff that's not necessarily board and holding the objectives. So that's one way to apply pressure into a quarter. The second one is being able to take and look at, so this one's got the Riptide in it. The Riptide is not deadly. And people may say, well, it's on that objective, so it's holding this quarter. And actually, to be honest with you, it could be holding any of the quarters, because from it, you want to actually say it holds a quarter by being able to shoot. So if these guys back in where they were, we'll put them back in right here from this standpoint here. And you've got that right there, and you've got the Riptide here. Since they're inside the building, he can actually shoot at them. So he can apply pressure from this side here into this side here by shooting at the objective secure models to try and remove the pressure. So that's one way that's where your guns. So if you think about, and I don't have any, or otherwise I'd use those, your Redemptor Dreadnoughts with Volkite cannons. The amount of shots, the amount of output. I've got a friend, Russell, he brings, plays Black Legion, I think it's Soul Burst guns or whatever, but they do mortal wounds on outputs. So anything shooting, it doesn't have to necessarily set in to apply pressure. It can apply pressure from a different distance, and it can be this quarter, it can be this quarter, or that quarter. And it just depends on where you want to apply the pressure. As we take and we work our way around the table, then we've got the two Death Guard units over here. One of them is Plague Burst Crawler, which has a mortar, which again doesn't need line of sight, so we can have the ability to apply pressure to any quarter within the table. And it could apply, say if the Riptide and it were on the same team, the Riptide says, I'm going to shoot over to the objective secure, then I could shoot the mortar over to the objective secure. Now I've had two models that are holding in this area, somewhat not objective secure, but being able to hold to apply pressure, and then they're able to actually shoot shots onto the other side to apply pressure into that third quadrant. So then I would have 1, 2, 3. Another way to apply pressure is the Rhino or Venoms, and I do it a lot with Venoms and stuff, but one of the things that you take and do is you look at move blocking. So if you look at the layout of the mission and the way things are laid out, I look at choke points. Everything should have a minimum of 4 inches in between it, so you could move. That's pretty much a standard layout, sometimes 6 inches. But this Rhino can actually apply pressure by just taking and moving here, so that it can move block anything but infantry to be able to actually put more pressure on this quadrant. So by doing this, I've actually now applied pressure or held pressure off this quadrant, except from infantry. And so it's another way to, again, applying pressure into different quadrants. And then as we work our way around here on this last one, and this is probably my favorite one, is the Scourge. And the reason I've got them on the table is because of the deep strike ability. Because it allows me to apply pressure again into a quarter. So the ability to apply pressure to force the opponent to have to worry about the deep strike means they're having to take units and be able to guard against that deep striking ability, which means they're now having to take and go, I have this unit in the air. I want to control whatever third quarter I want. I'm now forcing them to have to take and put units back to work for the 9-inch deep strike deny, which means that unit is not being able to apply pressure to any of the other 3 quadrants. It's actually being used to hold its quadrant that I'm trying to attack. So that's kind of the way to take and look at applying the pressure and looking at trying to hold 2 and just maintain pressure on the third. And when you start looking at that concept, you don't have to worry about your dice rolls, because I'm not using the models really to apply pressure from a standpoint of killing something. I'm applying pressure because I just want the board control. So that's kind of that thought process. Hyper Bunny with being in the chat, any questions on that? Does that make sense? Is that a little off tilter? By all means, ask away if anybody's there and got questions on it or thought process. By all means, I'm no expert on it. This is just the way I play the game, and figured I would share it with others and see if it maybe rings a bell, strikes a nerve. No questions. Guess I'm pretty straightforward with that. So that's kind of the ability to, like I said, being able to apply the pressure, making it that. And then when you apply the pressure, make sure you're applying that third pressure. A lot of times what will happen is people will start to apply pressure, and then they will either split fire, or they'll take a unit and go somewhere else, or they feel like they've got to control the whole board, and they'll push themselves out, and they become too thin. And so what happens is when they become too thin, I then look and go, all right, where's the weak point in the map? And again, I'm just going back and applying pressure on that third point. Play in that style, like I said, I don't have to make my dice rolls, because it's all about me just moving the units and being able to take and shoot the shots on where I need them to go. And you can apply a lot, and a lot of times you can take it even to the next level. When you're looking at this and you're starting to think about pressure, is then you start looking at layouts and deployment, because you can actually start applying the pressure from before a model ever hits the table. You can actually apply the pressure to the opponent by just looking at the layouts of the scenery and so forth. And player place terrain, I really like that format, and I know a lot of things are going to it. And the reason I like the format is because now I get to apply pressure by putting pieces of terrain down before the game ever begins. And that's me just thinking about, where do I want to put it? Where am I taking and looking to move my units? And what am I taking and looking to push forward? So I may come and say, all right, I want to be able to take and hold these two. My deployment, say, is the angle deployment, and I'm over on this side here. Go back to the top view so you can see. And I know that I want to be able to get to these two that are taken outside of my deployment, because my deployment is right here. I may actually set this piece up more so back like this, because I want to be able to take and apply pressure to this side of the table and make sure that I hold these two. So this is the two that I'm looking at holding, so I'm setting this up. What, Hyper Bunny, what do you do if you and your opponent are applying pressure different areas of the board, like a mirror? Oh, perfect. It actually is a pretty good one. So if you're applying pressure, or as some people like to say, you take Dawn of War and switch it to Hammer and Anvil. If we're applying it at different sides, then that's fine. In chess, if I play here and you're applying there, then I have to keep applying the pressure and figure out how to stop your pressure. Otherwise, the board state nobody gains an advantage. We're just changing on the mirrored sides. So what I like to do from that standpoint is I will apply the pressure that I want and try to take and get them to take and split up their forces. I try to apply pressure, and it may be a subtle pressure. It may be where I'm like, all right, I'm going to go just a little bit here and see if I can get them to actually commit some forces this way, or split their fire, because they're like, oh, if I can take and do that, then I can gain the advantage. And if I can force them to almost commit just a little bit, then that means their entire force mass has changed, and so therefore I can then apply pressure on where they weaken the state. So in the mirror, it's me trying to figure out where the chink is. And a lot of times when you see the high-end players playing at those top tables, they play very conservative. They play very reserved and not want to go out. And the reason being is they're waiting for the first person to, one, overextend, one, to open up that small piece where they can apply that chink in that armor and then be able to take and do it. In a mirror match, if they took and I'll take and throw something up here just a little bit. We'll just take and have it from this standpoint here. If it's moving around, I may actually throw a unit away. I may take and say, okay, what I want to do is I want to take, say I've got 2 units of witches here, and I advance them up and I tag the objective. Because even though I'm applying pressure to this quarter, the way that objective secure applies pressure is by taking points. So I've thrown these out here. I've done some things. Maybe I try to come up and I do tag this riptide here, knowing it might not can fall back, or it could with the witches and so forth, or different things. Well, now what's happened is there's a pressure applied. Now they could, one, just give up on this front and come over here, and that's fine, but I'm not trying to take and overextend myself so much that they can apply the pressure here. I may still have, you know, 3 or 4 units here to be able to hold this. And so then they're made to make a choice. And this is what happens in chess is, do you apply more pressure? Do you give up a free move? If they try to apply here, then they're giving me this. Then I'm going, okay, I've got these two. I just need to hold this one. So my forces then rebuttal back to this and actually overcommit back on this side, so that now I have this one, and this one is still mine because they didn't respond to the pressure applied. So if they do respond to that, then I can take and send some forces that way. So it may be where I'm not trying to extend in all 4, but I'm trying to get them to commit to deal with something. Or if they stay split, they stay split. Because sometimes in those matches, most of the time the way I build my list, so this would kind of go into the next piece of the applying the pressure part, is you've got the terrain, you've got the deployment, and we'll go through those, but then we go into the list. So my list on my secondaries are pretty much set to get me on average 30 to 35 points. And I can do that without engaging the opponent. And so therefore, I'm sitting there going, all right, what secondaries did you choose? If I'm getting 35 on mine and you're getting, you have to engage me to get yours, then it already puts me ahead. Not like in a mirror match. I'm sorry, bad choice of words. That your opponent holds 2 on one side and you hold 2 on the other. But I think you've already, yes, this is what I'm going into now. So if say they want to sit there and I'm sitting here and I'm trying to apply and they don't want to take, and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to sit here, I'm going to hold mine and you hold yours. Then you go into the list building, and the list building is built to apply pressure as well. You should always, everybody says I have 2 good secondaries and my third one's always up in the air based on what I'm playing. But really what you should do is try to take your list to say, okay, what 3 can I do and on average score 10 points on those secondaries, which means I can score 30 points on my secondaries without engaging my opponent. If it's a hold 1, hold 2, hold more, then you pretty much, if you don't engage each other, the way the armies are all set up, set on the tables, you're going to score 40 points on your primaries. They'll score 40 on theirs. You would score 30 on yours. If they can score more than 30 and not engage you, then they'll be able to win. If they can't, then you win. And so again, now I've applied pressure to them going, I'm starting the game scoring 70 points. You're starting the game scoring 60 points if you don't engage me. What are you going to do? I'm more than happy to set. And then the moment they have to engage is the moment that I respond to apply the pressure to the third quarter of the board out of the 4 quarters. So that's again how to apply pressure without the game ever beginning. Because if they are good and they've built a list that they can score more in secondaries than I can without engaging me. I know Dark Angels, you know, they had a way and ability to do that for the longest. They could score an 80, 85, 88 pretty easy. So then it forces me to have to engage them first without them having to engage me, which then draws me out. And so I have to make the right choices to be able to apply pressure into one of the quadrants to see if they are going to either try to hold it or come back at me from that standpoint. And then going back to the table and the terrain is looking at the terrain. A lot of times when I look at terrain in my deployment, I try to choose, we'll just say hammer and anvil we've got here, and we'll say we're choosing sides. So one of the things I would look at is choke points on the table based on TO laying it out. If we're laying out objectives or terrain, however you want to lay it out. So I'm looking at choke points, and every choke point that I can find on that table is a choke point that I need to figure out how to control on my side. So one of the choke points on this one here, so you got a choke point here, you've got a choke point here, and you got a choke point on that side over there. This one is a choke point, but it's really wide, so it's going to be hard to actually clog out. These 3 are pretty easy, either one with troops, ones with vehicles, or so forth. And if I do that, then I'm able to control these 2 objectives. And based on the way these choke points are up, if I'm running Death Guard with rhinos, if I'm running Dark Eldar with transports, if I'm running something that's got a good save, then that's 3 units to hold up these two quarters, kind of, so to speak, unless they have fly. There's always the variables, and I can do another one and we could get into variables as far as question goes. But this would be the one that I'd have to worry about. But since I can do these, if I'm able to get in front of these choke points and clog them, then I can actually apply pressure over here because there's no choke points on this side of the table. There's a choke point over there, but these are open. So when you do an attack or defend, if they're mirrored, you're looking for choke points as far as a TO setting up the table equal. If it's player placed, I'm literally setting up mine to be able to make choke points in my area so that I can take and hold that out. And I'll show you one of the things. So at the Lone Star Open, in player placed terrain, I really worked heavy on those choke points and had several matches against sisters. And I know this is not her, but Morganval is a vehicle, and so are the pendant engines. And so one of the missions that I played, the gentleman was bringing it down the side here, and he got to about right here. And when he got there, I actually unloaded a bunch of witches and ran them, advanced them, and got them within 1 inch of it. And so when I stopped there, he was like, okay, because he expected me to engage him. And my question was, not really on the list, can they heroically intervene? And he said no. So with that being said, the witches just stopped. And I said, your turn. Well, what that did is now he can't move because he can't move through them. So he literally has to stay here. He shoots, he kills, he does this. And then he killed him off. I had no problem picking him up. He didn't threaten any of the quarter over here, so therefore he still held on this one. And the next turn, I ran another 5-man unit of witches at him. Same thing. So I basically did this to 2 sides of his table the entire game. I literally just threw away 50 points of the army, running them and stopping them from being able to move. So that's another way to take and put, using it from a standpoint of applying pressure that they can't move. You hear all the time people go, well, you move block or you do this and you do those things, which is all good and gravy, but to me it's, why are you doing those? You don't just move block to move block. Well, he can't move. Yeah, he can't move up, he can't advance. But really it's to be able to keep him from applying pressure over here, keep them from moving into the areas you need them to. And really, if you can keep them hid down in certain quarters and apply the pressure in the other, then you can get kind of ahead there. So it's kind of a different way to look at the game. None of this requires any dice rolls. It's literally looking at the table, seeing what's presented to you, looking at what you have in your army that can do the choke points, can apply the different points of the pressures, being able to take and move, whether it's deep strike units from, say, you have 2 or 3 Scourge, Terminators, or so forth you throw up in the air, or say you've got vehicles, you've got rhinos that have got people in them. The rhinos can go block when it blows, then being able to take and use those infantry. One of the things that people have seen me start doing a lot is, say I have the rhino, and I'm just going to use these witches just to keep me from having to go find models right now. So you have the rhino here. The rhino comes up, and I'm going to borrow this ruler here. Most of the time when I make my move, I always measure, and I do it quickly, as quick as I can, but I will take and try to do the move block as much as I can, and then make sure that whatever I did is within 6 inches of an objective, whether it's this way or whether it's this way. I don't care as long as it's within 6 inches. And the reason being is the characters aren't getting out because I'm taking and putting it on the choke point, but I want that when that vehicle blows for the 1 CP for the Desperate Breakout, I'm able to actually get the objective secure bodies, whether it's Plague Marines, witches, doesn't matter what the transport's carrying, be able to take and grab that objective. So now I've lost the pressure of the choke point, but I've applied pressure on taking the point. So again, pressure is still being applied in this quarter. So if I can take and have a bonus ability, say from that standpoint, being able to do that while taking and using one model that's carrying other models to be able to relieve but apply during their turn, that means that I didn't have to move that pawn, queen, rook, or anything extra. I just got free movement out of it to be able to take and do that. Any questions from anybody maybe on? That's kind of what I kind of wanted to go over on this one. Like I said, instead of playing a game for 3.5, 4 hours, and talking about it, just looking at doing some live streams on 30 minutes of chat to an hour, kind of going over different things, showing the approach to the game a little bit different than I guess most, or maybe it's the same as everybody else. I don't know. This is the way I play it, and I know you can talk to the best players in the world, you can build the best list, you can take and have the best strategy, you can know everything it is, but 25% of it is dice rolls. And so my approach to the game is, how can I build a list that doesn't have to roll the dice? And how can I build a list that applies the pressures to the hold 2, apply to the 3rd, maintaining 3 quadrants to be able to figure out how to take and pull out a win. So it's kind of a little bit different. Again, different approach to this. So everything was good. You like it? Perfect. Everyone is getting to 20, 1, 1, 2, 3. Sounds good. Sounded good. Good deal. I'm going to take, as usual, Twitch and YouTube. I stream it on Twitch. I'll upload it to YouTube. Heroic Skill Gamers. Subscribe there. I will read the chats if people like this on YouTube. Put it in the chat what you'd like to see next. Thought processes on things. Even getting the point of taking certain armies and breaking down certain units and how I would use them differently than the norm. Even to the standpoint of, even though I didn't do it tonight, the guests to have over to come play games, I'm more than happy to have guests come in, be on the channel to discuss different things as well, the way they look at it and the approaches from that standpoint. No other questions. I appreciate it. This has roughly been about 25 minutes, so I'm trying to keep them short and sweet, not get too long-winded. And I'll put together some more stuff if people like this. So I appreciate it. And see this, Shwani, you should break down each phase of the game, how you set up movement and so forth. I'll look at doing that next week, and how I'll actually kind of do it from a standpoint of building on tonight. So with tonight being about pressure and understanding the chess piece and how to do that, next Tuesday what I'll do is I may look at sitting down and go through each set of the phase and how that would actually apply, from setup to movement to shooting, and how I'd use all those pieces depending on the army and what I'm facing. Any suggestions on 2 armies to take and throw up each other on how to break those down and how to look at those different models? I'll bring some very obscuring ones from that standpoint even. So yeah. Oh, me. Well, with that, ladies and gents, I definitely appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said, be uploaded. Sponsors, Merlin's Grimdark Painting, Dragon's Lair, and Clutch. They're taking care of everything so far. Hopefully everything keeps looking good. I will say, even though I am not part of it, this weekend I think is Charity Hammer. By all means, from everything I've looked, it looks like it's a good thing. You can get a chance to tune into that this weekend if you're sitting there and got anything to do. Some of the best in the world apparently going to be playing in it, so it should be a pretty good event. Everyone have a good one, and good night.